Isn't it about time that Israel should consider leaving the UN? It doesn't like UN. It doesn't like the fact that most of the countries around the world do not approve of Israeli genocide in Gaza. Israel doesn't like anything about the UN. Israel doesn't like the ICC. Israel doesn't like the ICJ. And it seems everything is stemming from the hatred Netanyahu is generating against his country, which is very unfortunate. But nevertheless, isn't it about time Israel should consider leaving the UN? Israel is a state because of its recognition as a state by the UN. We recall Resolution 181, which was adopted on 29 October 1947. 56 countries were member states of the UN then. There are 193 member states of the UN now. The countries in Africa and Asia are freer now to vote, and the world is more able to express their united opinion now than they were in 1947. 33 voted in favor, 13 countries voted against, 10 abstention, and 1 was absent. Of those countries in Africa, only 2 voted in favor. The Liberian government said during that time that they were afraid of their loan from the US being cut off. Britain abstained from voting because Israel was not agreeing to Jerusalem being an international city. The French ambassador to the UN during that time was visited by one Mr. Barouche, who was a Jewish supporter of the Democratic Party, who was an economic advisor to President Roosevelt, who was also the American representative at the UN Atomic Commission then, and who was also in private a supporter of the Zionist lobbyist group Irgun, had warned the French ambassador that France wouldn't get American aid unless they recognized Israel. Also, the Filipino ambassador was not in support of being part of the supporting resolution for creation or partition of Palestine and recognition of Israel. But the vote changed soon after a phone call from Washington. The Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru said his sister, Vijaya Lakshmi, who was Indian ambassador to the UN, was receiving daily warnings and threats if India didn't vote in favor of the resolution. But India at last voted against. And India didn't recognize Israel as a state until 1950. So, in reality, China abstained, India voted against, no Arab state supported birth of Israel. The countries which created Israel, European countries, and Europe was trembling under economic pressure from the US. So in reality, United States was solely responsible and solely credited for creating Israel. Liberia, the country which voted in favor of creation of Israel, was warned of their loans being cut off from the US, and Liberia was always dependent on the US anyway. And South Africa also, the other country which voted in favor, was already an apartheid state, a British proxy apartheid state. So, most of Africa was still reeling under colonialism. Most of the Asian countries were simply coming out of European imperialism. So, it seems Israeli legitimacy as a United Nations recognized country never in fact had the real footing. Now Israel is against the ICC. Israel is against the ICJ's decision. Israel thinks the whole world is wrong and they are right, with their body West threatening sanctions against the ICC. Even during the last few resolutions for ceasefire, we have seen the countries which were against the ceasefire resolution were heavily reliant on US economic support. So, isn't it about time Israel should simply leave the UN? Because it seems Israel never got along with the rest of the world.